Welcome to A Celtic World, the Celtic YouTube channel that celebrates Celtic fans around the world. We've got some usual suspects on tonight, but for reasons that will be explained shortly, I'm Paul, I'm in Western Australia, and I'll be your host tonight. I feel a bit like I'm on blind date, like that shows my age, doesn't it? Where are you? What's your name and where do you come from? So, and swiftly moving on from that terrible 80s and 90s reference of UK television, I will let Gav explain why I am in the hot seat tonight.
Paul's in the hot seat because I'm getting my internet upgraded tomorrow, and they called to confirm that a man was coming tomorrow to help me. But for some reason, they've also cut my internet off, so I'm on my hotspot on my phone, and my phone doesn't seem to be charging terribly well, so I might take the opportunity to go and get a charger, a better charger, while the other guys introduce themselves. So I might have to leave, not just my chair, but the entire conversation at some stage, much to many people's delight, no doubt. Over to you, Ian.
Hi, Borada, Croeso I Gymru. Welcome to Wales. Ian here down in a relatively, I think you, Paul, you were saying it's 34 with you. I think it's about dramatically colder here in Cardiff in Wales. So I'll pass over to Brian.
Thanks, Ian. Brian from Banbridge in Ireland. Again, resonating what Ian saying, it is quite cold here. I put the heating on for the first time, I think, a couple of days ago. So there we go. Yeah.
Well, we're absolutely...
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say we're absolutely in reverse because I cranked up the aircon for the first time a couple of days ago. It hit 35. It hit 35 yesterday, and it got to about 32 today. And it's only the first month of spring, so I imagine we might be in for a reasonably hot summer ahead. Which
Paul, I was going to interject about the blind date sort of reference there.
Yeah.
God help the lady who's part of you're handsome. Ian's handsome as well, but God help the lady who gets himself in Gav.
Well, so is it not usually the two that miss out? Right, so you two might miss out, and me and Ian will fight it out for.
That's it. Yeah,
if she's nice looking and very intelligent. If she's intelligent, and the wife isn't watching either. Right? Okay. Well, that's enough nonsense for her. Gav's back, so we've padded that perfectly. Next thing is to let you know that we live stream twice a week. We're still a relatively new channel. I know people are gradually getting to know who we are, but it's still early days. So we want to let people know when we are on live. So we're on live Mondays and Thursdays with a rotating cast of dubious characters and interesting chat. Here's the times we're on. So if you can correlate that to where you are in the world, please come and join us as you get the chance to. We'll hopefully be with you for about an hour tonight. Hopefully all of us will make it through that. But as you know, Gav may have issues, so or more issues than usual. Anyway, on that note, we better move swiftly along to the main topics of conversation. So things we're going to cover today, we're going to chat about general momentum and general progress. We're a little bit into the season now, so I think it's a good time to look at that. We've obviously got a game against Motherwell coming up on the weekend, so we'll touch on that. We'll also have a very brief preview on the Champions League, where we'll probably go into more detail on that on Monday's show, but we will touch on it because not all of us will be on Monday's show. So we'll have a little crack at it, and then we'll do what we always do, which is Celtic socials, our looks at social media over the last few days, some Celtic related, some just football related. So we'll get to that in a bit. But first up, we will chat about our general momentum. So I'll start with you, Gav. Are things beginning to get going for Brendan Rodgers?
That is the sense, and I spoke about it on the last show, that he's taking a long-term view. He's a very sort of patient manager. I think he strikes a patient tone compared to all of us who are desperate for immediate results. And this question of momentum or the team gelling, all that kind of stuff. You hear him saying it's just time, just takes a bit of time. He's repeated that several times in interviews. And it seems to be the case. You know, we seem to be taking little incremental steps. It's like, you know, an old-fashioned train that, you know, is trying to get started, and it's a bit clunky initially. But then you just sort of see that the momentum's starting to build, and it makes more noise, much like Brian's dogs. And then eventually the train's going very fast. We're a long way from that, but we're just starting to build up momentum. You could still probably jump on the train from the platform without hurting yourself at this stage, but time's running out before we're going full steam. That's the feeling I get. And momentum's a funny thing for Celtic because, you know, we're legends in one competition and very poor in another. And you hope that the momentum of domestic dominance will help you forward into the Champions League. Whether it will or not remains to be seen. We're going to talk about the Lazio game, but there's another game to go prior to that. But that's obviously hanging over us. So momentum, yes, I hope so. I think so. And even though the results from the other side of the city in terms of points have been much the same, it's difficult to think that they're building up a great amount of momentum. They seem to take 2 steps forward, 1 step back. For us, I think it is kind of incrementally getting better each time. That's how it feels to me, anyway.
Yeah, I think I tend to share that view as well, Gav. I think it's time, right? Some of these players have barely been in the door, and a lot have hardly had any game time between injuries and getting up to speed and getting into the squad and international breaks and all the rest of it. So I agree with you on that. Ian, what's your view in terms of how Rodgers is doing so far, and where do you think we are at this point in the season?
I'm kind of like, I'm cautiously it's a yes. I think we've had 2 big wins for different reasons. I think Ibrox and Livingston, both good wins for different reasons. And I think maybe objectively, taking a step back, the Feyenoord game before it kind of, we get done by the red cards, there was something there as well. So I think when you look at that, you kind of say yes. What I would say is we're seeing some different things. So we're seeing O'Reilly talked earlier in the season about making runs into the box, and we kind of see that's getting results. I think we're kind of seeing Taylor play himself into form by moving more into that kind of inverted role. And I kind of think we're also seeing more of a slow, deliberate tempo, to kind of use a Gav analogy. The ball isn't a hot potato like it was under Ange. It's more of like a baby, more taking care of it and passing around. And I think there's still questions. So those are the things that I can kind of see that are changing that give me the confidence, because obviously you can see the changes. But I think there's still questions as to, you know, what the wingers are doing, what Kyogo's doing, what the rest of the midfield's doing. And I think it's that legacy thing that we've talked about before. Under Ange, we knew exactly what everyone was doing at every point in the game. And I think, you know, we're beginning to see that progress and momentum, and we're seeing the kind of green shoots of where things are working. But obviously there's still more stuff to be done. So yeah, progress 100%, but we're just not at the end product for me, which is fine.
I think that's, yeah, exactly. I think that's fair. I think, you know, if we'd be pretty surprised if we were. You know, you always want a bit of room for improvement, but with this amount of change, and it's more change than we probably expected, yeah, it is going to take time, as Gav sort of touched on at the beginning. Brian, just wanted to get your thoughts on some of the injuries. Obviously, we've had a lot. We seem to be having some starting to come back. Who do you think we might see, you know, soonest in terms of back from injury, and who else are you interested in seeing getting more game time over the coming week or two?
Again, I think through the initial start of Brendan's second reign, he's had a lot of adversity, and I think he's going to stick with the team. I think he's going to, you know, the only position I think would be up for grabs would be Abada's the right wing. So there's players could potentially come in and out, but I think he's going to stay loyal to Larger Bielka and and Scales. You know, if CCV was available, he would edge him back into the team, and we're in a great position that we can do that instead of just throwing CCV into Lazio or, you know, Phillips. And you know, this game's starting to learn. They're starting to play together. They're this press conference today, Brendan was saying about, you know, being possession based, build-ups as well. And I just wanted, guys, I'm going off kilter again, but we've had three. Brendan said at the start of the season about being a wee bit more put a bit more aggression into the game. We've had 3 red cards this season already in the space of probably 2 weeks. You know, how many red cards did we get under Ange in 2 years? I can't think of any. So it's trying to get that aggression in without, you know, getting the aggression in, getting the, you know, putting a bit of fight into the team, but learning not to get sent off, learning to be a wee bit more cute. So I don't know. What do you think, guys? Red cards.
The red card, the Lagerbielke shouldn't have had a red card because his yellow one was never a first one. Home was a debatable red card. I would say Joe Hart's one probably is a red card, but it's not to do with really being aggressive. It's more just a case of timing. So I think I think definitely we do have to be more aggressive, because I think that was maybe one of the problems with Brendan's first reign, and that we were nice in possession. We held on to the ball well. And maybe that's something he's asking people to do now, is to be a bit more aggressive, to kind of give us that difference, especially when it comes to breaking down teams, because we're not going to be able to outpass them if they're sitting too deep. So maybe we just need something a bit extra. So maybe that's why I'm saying it. But I think we've been unlucky with the red cards, in my opinion.
Yeah, I tend to agree as well. Gav, any thoughts on the Reds?
Yeah, well, as Brian says, that's not the kind of aggression that Brendan had in mind. You know, getting sent off for being daft, which you could say at least 2 of them are. Well, one's because the keeper's getting old and doesn't have the reflexes that he used to have, and we're long overdue a replacement for the keeper. It's another story. Lagerbielke's, I thought, was pretty harsh, arm across. Holmes, I think, was possibly the closest related to what Brendan was talking about, being more aggressive in midfield. He was aggressive, but not cute. So, yeah. In terms of injuries, though, like, has anyone got any latest data on this? Busy researching away an hour before going live.
Well, Abad is out to next year. Abad is out to next year. Phillips is close. CCV and Naroki are still 2 or 3 weeks away, I think, is the last.
Yeah, I think I read CCV the first week of October back in training. So it's still a little, you know, it's still a week or so away. So he's back in training. So you're not expecting him to play for another 2 to 3. You're right, Ian. That would be my view. Picking up on injuries and team rotation and how Brendan's doing. Couple of things I wanted to pick up on. Gav, I'm not having all the blame laid at Hart's door for that red card. I think Scales in a new partnership shouldn't be trying to play offside and letting his man run off him, and he leaves Hart without a decision to make. He has to come, and he's
Scales is the new Maldini, haven't you heard?
Yeah, no,
flawless.
I'm not having that.
He's destined for the very top of the European game.
Yeah, I'm not having that. And then to Brian's point on Lagerbielke, does he have to stick with him? Because he can't play Tuesday. So are we going with him on the weekend? I wouldn't. I'd play whoever you're going to play on. I'd play whoever you're going to play against Lazio, to be honest. Give them a chance to play together. But we still don't know what you're going to do there. Because if you're doing a new partnership, which Iwata would be, presumably, or if you're going to 3, it's even more radical, which that's the 2 things that people seem to be cheering. Are you going to go in for the first time against Lazio? I think that's mental. But
would you have confidence?
What the rest of you think?
Paul, would you have confidence in Phillips actually being fit enough to play 60 minutes this weekend?
Well, if he's fit to play 60 minutes, you've got to give him that. But if it seems unlikely, given he's not even been in the squad since he got injured. Yeah. So to go from not even on the bench to 60 minutes to then Lazio, I think that's a stretch, to be honest. So
I think the other thing to consider is as well, you know, not in a positive light, but obviously we're not in the League Cup. So Rodgers has had a week with the team to work in different things, and we have seen during kind of the 3 weeks he has really ramped up and worked in things. So I think you're right. Whatever team starts at Motherwell is probably the one that's going to start at Lazio. But I can't see, even if Phillips is fit again, I just don't think it would be worth the gamble. I don't think his experience is that great, that he could dislodge what is probably becoming a reasonably solid partnership.
And away from the central defensive area, because this is one of those games that's played on the miraculous substance known as grass, do we expect to see the players that we didn't see at Livingston, the wingers, for example? Anyone?
I'd like to see Palma get a run bit of game time.
I tell you now, I think he's going to run it again. I think there's going to be two things that are going to annoy people for that lineup. I think Forrest is going to be back in there, and I think it's going to be Bain. I think we just have to deal with that now. It's not going to be Seacrest. It's going to be Bain, so we all just need to deal with whatever that means. But I think Forrest will come in for the same reasons as the ball retention. I just think it was a good performance against Livingston. I don't see a reason to change it from his point of view. I know we'd want to see Palmer, we'd maybe want to see Yang, but I just think it's away from home. Motherwell's a tough game. I think he's going to go back to Forrest for that experience and ball retention.
I don't. I think Palmer will play.
And what, Dizan on the right?
Probably. I suspect. I think Forrest was brought in. Well, if you saw the other show there the other day, we're talking about Forrest possibly being brought in, to protect Palmer. But, a lot of the people said before the last game, some of these players need minutes in their legs, and it didn't happen. I think it has to happen before the Lazio game. If he doesn't want to have to throw them in. Once that game goes horribly wrong and we get to about 60 minutes and we need to do something, you don't want to be thrown on people who haven't played at all in the last two games. And I doubt he's going to be putting Forrest on for that. Do you think Forrest might feature against Lazio, Ian?
No, I don't think Forrest will feature against Lazio, but I don't think so. I think because that's a home game and it's a European night, I think we can afford to carry an extra gamble. I think that's maybe the way that Rodgers looks at some of these. He knows exactly what he gets with Forrest in terms of his system, retaining that ball, like hardly ever loses it, makes a pass. And I think with the Lazio game, he's probably going to want to inject more chaos into it. So that's where I could see a Yang or a Palmer coming in for that one. So I would expect him to start with Forrest and then bring someone on if we're doing well. But again, I think this kind of goes back to our previous point about momentum, we know what Ange was doing by the end of Ange's tenure, who would be getting selected. Whereas with Rodgers, we're just still kind of working out who his favourites are, who he plays for, away games, more physical teams, etc., etc. So I think it's just a case of figuring that out.
Whilst I've got you in, I think you had some strong views on a certain youngster, or not so young anymore, going to be forcing his way back into the team, coming back from injury. Do you want to share?
I got to be careful what I say about Mikey Johnson, because I know there's a lot of Mikey Johnson fans. I think, don't get me wrong, I was one of them. I kind of think in the same way we shouldn't be in a position where we're fielding James Forrest, I don't think we should be in the position where we're fielding Mikey Johnson, if I'm completely honest. The way that I was thinking about it, because I had a look back at his loan game, and the last successful loan for us that I would consider was Christie when he went to Aberdeen. Played 28 games, 10 assists, 4 goals. And then you look at MJ, who's in a similar role, 25 games, 4 assists, 1 goal in his Portuguese league, loan. So he hardly kind of set the world alight there. There was a time, and this low bar, I know. But there was a time when he first kind of had his first breakout season. I think that was maybe about 3 or 4 ago, that he was actually outperforming Ryan Kent in terms of the statistics. And I had a lot of hope for him then, because I thought, if he's trending that way, he could go on and kick on. But unfortunately, injuries have probably taken its toll, lack of form, not being settled, etc. And I just think at the age of 24, his chance of making it with us, I think, is probably past him. Ultimately, Rodgers is going to be the one to decide. I just don't think, as much as people call for Mikey Johnson, I personally do not see the evidence there that says he should be getting in ahead of kind of some of the newer signings, or like a Maeda or someone like that.
Yeah, can I jump in? Ian, there's a guy that you probably know on Twitter. Ian, you're a big Twitter guy, glasgowceltic. There's a guy called Celtic Nation who I saw was recounting how whenever he said he was looking forward to seeing Scales rejuvenation under Rodgers or something, and everyone laughed at him, but he turned out to be right. So now he was planting his flag in the ground for Mikey Johnson along the same lines. And when I saw you teasing that you were going to represent Mikey Johnson on the pod today, I initially thought, wow, he shares this view. What's behind the view of someone like that guy? Do you think that Mikey Johnson's still got a future at Celtic? What are the positives?
I think look, at the end of the day, we're all Celtic fans, right? And we want people to do well, and we especially want guys that have come from our youth system to do well. So I think sometimes we ignore that. Now, look, you can look back at Mikey Johnson and you can probably get some decent highlights of him skinning players, cutting in, like scoring some goals, dribbling past people, taking men on one-to-one. But I think some of them are going to be years old by now. So I think people look at that and say, well, there was that potential there 2-3 years ago. Could it come back now? Like, we want him to do well. So we're saying, I think that's where it comes from. I think there is some evidence of it way in the past, just not recently.
Yeah. Do you want to read
Frank's? So Frank's pretty despondent about this discussion by the looks of it, because very nearly October 2023, and here we are talking about Forrest and Sick Note Johnston as if there really are any kind of serious option. And then some will wonder why we finished bottom of our group. It's a pretty valid point, to be honest. I guess we are just floating it as a possibility. I don't think Johnston will be anywhere near that squad. I was hoping Ian was as Gav was. I was hoping Ian was going to take a particularly controversial view. I don't think it's a controversial view at all to think that that Mikey Johnston is the savior. That
no, I couldn't even bring myself to do it as a joke. What I would say as well as with Mikey Johnson is he was more of an Ange player than he was a Rodgers player, and if he didn't make it under Ange, an Ange sent him out on loan, then it's kind of, I just don't know it's going to be there.
Yep. I think we should move on from that. There's a bit here. I think Gav wanted me to touch on Tilio because he had his first minutes in a Celtic shirt for the B team last week, as did a few others on the fringes and coming back from injuries. And I think as the designated correspondent from Australian shores this evening, I've been given the task of giving a little update on Marco Tilio. I'll be honest, I don't watch the A-League. Like most of us, Celtic's probably enough for me. But I am across a little bit of the noise on Tilio down here, and it's pretty positive. The kid's played a lot of games for his age, which I think he's got probably if not 100, then certainly pushing up towards that amount of senior games. He was playing in a successful City, Melbourne City side, part of the City group. They tend to have good quality players. And as a young player, he just kind of had to fit in where there was a spot. So I think that's one of the reasons why people aren't 100% sure where he's going to sort of flourish at Celtic, because he's played on the left, he's played on the right, he's dropped off. He's got pace to burn, and he has got a bit of tricky footwork as well. So if he can get himself fit and up to speed, and at least he's getting some minutes now, I'm reasonably optimistic that this kid can do something. It might not be 3 throughout this season. But I think he can get some, like we're talking about momentum. If he could get some minutes and some momentum, he could be interesting. He's another one who's predominantly right-footed, but kind of likes to play off the left. So we've probably got a few of those now. Palmer does that. Meira does that. Yang can do that as well. So it'd be interesting to see where he fits in. But it's good news that he's on his way back. It gives more competition. And yeah, he's got a decent dig on him, and he's quite direct. He will run at teams. So I would like to see him sort of get some minutes off the bench over the coming weeks in the league, and then see where we end up with that with Tilio. But I'm cautiously optimistic about what he might add to the squad. One of the things we wanted to touch on was sort of we touched on briefly last time, was just generally, the elephant in the room. Gav was really despondent and didn't want to even speak about him or think about him. But obviously, Ange is having a great run since he went down south. He's unbeaten domestically. That's not true. I think he lost in the League Cup, but he's unbeaten in the league. So how are we all? We'll kind of know roughly how Gav's feeling. I might let you repeat yourself for those that missed that, Gav, and then we'll move through to. I'll then go to Brian, and then I'll finish on again.
I just skip over every story I see about Ange. As I'm scrolling through Twitter, it comes up, and I quickly get that off my screen. I don't want to see it. I don't want to watch him interviewed by Gary Lineker. I don't want any of that. I can't be bothered. He left couple of years into what he led me to believe was a multi-year European adventure. But I miss Ange Ball, I have to say. I just loved watching, especially obviously domestically. It was terrible for results in Europe, but you see so many teams playing that way now. Did you see the Brighton goal against Man United? And then even there was some lower league highlights going around. Was it Rotherham or someone? Scored an amazing goal as a result of a 60 pass move.
There was the Ipswich one as well. There was Ipswich the other day. Even Airdrie got into the act with an absolute passing move from the back. You see the Airdrie one? That was pretty impressive as well. So yeah, there's a bit of that going around. I agree with you. I miss Ange, but I miss Ange as well, to be honest. I just enjoyed his varying degrees of mate. It's I just obviously as a new Aussie, had the passport for a couple of years. You can do a lot with mate in Australia, and we saw the full range during. There was never a double. Like I'll be honest, I never missed a press conference in the Ange era. It was one of the first things I did as soon as it was out on YouTube. We never missed it. I'll be honest, I'm not as religious. I'm not as religious with the Brendan Rodgers press.
Well, they're very different.
They're a bit mundane, to be honest.
Well, it depends what you're interested in, because Ange's were all deflection and, not trying to let the press get away with stuff. But he never said anything remotely interesting about the football, because there was nothing to say, because it's just rinse and repeat. Go out and do what I've taught you to do every single game over and over again, and keep doing it until the game is finished. And then we'll see what the score is, no matter who we were playing. So there was nothing to talk about. Whereas Rodgers is far more interesting from a football point of view. Players, formations, adapting to the opposition, all that kind of stuff. Far more informative.
He doesn't have a crack at the press as much, though. I enjoyed that. They deserve it. Anyway, Brian, you missing Ange? No, or Ange Ball? No. Or neither? Have we moved on?
We've moved on. He's dead to me. As soon as you don't either don't get all this apologists about players. Oh, how's Kieran Tierney doing? How's Henrik doing? Once you leave the club, you're dead to me. He said, Radio Gav saying, sitting getting interviewed by Lineker. It was on my YouTube feed, and I near bloody just get rid of it. All right, mate, and all this. Mate, go away. He's the latest flame at the minute. He'd probably go, as Gav says, he'd probably stay here at Spurs, go to United, win something, and then who knows? But he's used us. I know we got a couple of good seasons out of him, and the football was fantastic. But once you leave, all my eggs are in Brendan's basket. And I like the fact that he's boring, and I haven't missed a press conference yet. Neil Lennon's, God love him, Neil Francis Lennon, his last season, I couldn't even watch his press conferences. And I do miss the crack lines and going for the jugular, but I think the Neanderthals in the Scottish press realise they can't go for Brendan. They can't do it. They can't do it because funny enough, somebody asked a question of him on Monday, and he turned around and says, "You were at the press conference on Friday. I gave you an answer about that on Friday." But he said it in a nice way, you know. But I know I'm over Hans. You know what I mean? He left us in Stum. Brendan came in to save the day, and you know he had a bit of baggage. But I just thought last week, you know, whenever the steward rugby tackled the young fella and Brendan came in and put his arm around him and walked him down to the thing, that sums it up for me. You know, that's Brendan's back. The king is dead. Long live the king. You know.
Ian, you got a more positive pitch on Ange?
Do you know what? Like, I think ultimately, you know, I keep on saying this. I'm a Celtic fan. I want to see Celtic winning. You know, so that's the primary goal. Ange is gone now, so it's kind of out of sight, out of mind to an extent. You know, I did watch Spurs Arsenal, and it was a good game, but you know, it's weird. You're just not invested. That's how you know. You watch the game and you're just not invested at all. And I think I want Ange to do well because I think he's a PR outlet for us. Like as much as we can talk about how he interacted with the press and stuff, when you get nominated from that manager's award, he was all talking about Celtic. Do you know what I mean? Which, you know, there's people that have left us that are quick to stick the boot in. And he was quick to kind of come back and praise that. And he's always kind of defended us in that. And, I just don't think that is repeated a lot from people who leave us. So I appreciate that. And ultimately, if Rodgers continues the way he's going, I won't pine for Ange Ball because I enjoyed Rodgers' style of play first time round. Maybe a little bit slow in places, but, you know, was winning attractive attacking football. That being said, I think when the dust settles in 10 years or something, we might look back and say that attacking-wise, Ange Ball was probably some of the best, you know, attacking football that we'd seen.
Again, Ian, it's like having that girlfriend who was particularly good at a certain thing, but when she's not with you anymore, so, you know, there's a big trophy that we were the first one to win back in 1967. That's the biggest PR stunt we ever need. We don't need Ange to promote the club. We are Celtic.
I know, but using your analogy and crossing into maybe some youth territory here, I think if your old girlfriend was particularly good at something, started up an OnlyFans, I'm sure you'd fire it up a couple of times just to see what was going on.
You'd have a stalker subscription.
Yeah.
Well, yes. Let's not use the word stalker, but yeah, no, you know what I mean. I think it's.
I know, but it's painful. It's painful to sit and watch them coming out. It's like, what do you call your man out of Toy Story 3, the big pink bear? You're watching him coming out with the Spurs top on. Is it Lazio?
Your analogies are all over the place today.
I don't know. I'm in different time zone to you boys, but no,
not all of us. You're in the same time zone as Ian.
Well, yeah.
Okay, but so you used the word painful, Brian. This conversation leads us on to a little treat that we have this week, which Paul will get ready to play. And Mickey, who appeared a few shows ago, the guy who's in Rome, who runs Finnegan's Irish pub, he can you still hear me? Am my connection dropping?
Yeah, you lost Ferris from a millisecond. You're okay.
Okay. He's done something along the lines of Celtic karaoke. Miley Cyrus's song Flowers, which is a breakup song in the I Will Survive mold. This is for any of those of you who still need closure on the Ange separation to help us focus on this season. So this is Mickey's Celtic karaoke inspired by Miley Cyrus.
We were good, green, white and gold. We never stopped is what you sold. We were right till we weren't. Your head was turned, you went to Spurs. We didn't want you to leave, we didn't want to fight. Started to cry and then remembered why. We can buy Carter Vickers the Champions League, beat the Huns at Ibrox, and watch Gav's show twice a week. We can go to paradise, like with the world's best fans, and we'll love Celtic better than, yeah, we'll love Celtic better than you can.
You're going to be able to release a CD soon, Gav, with the amount of tracks that are getting done here.
But I mean, that was a lot of quality guitar and singing. Nothing crap about that, Frank.
I think Frank's bang out of order there. I think that's bang out of order.
Yeah, but Frank could be saying that in a good way or a negative way. You don't know.
Does anyone here know did Anne smoke? I remember hearing somebody. I can't remember where it was. A podcast. I think it might have been the Homeboys, and they were saying about Anne smoking. Did anyone ever see him with a sniffy fag on the sidelines?
No, I know he coughed.
He smoked cigars. There's some footage of him by a pool in Greece on his holidays with like a big cigar on the go. So I think that's probably where the cough came from.
Right.
It's gone now, though. Apparently.
Oh, I've heard it. It's creeping back in again.
Oh. Creeping
back in again. Okay, well, I was pretty impressed with that. I was pretty impressed with that.
Excellent. That's him playing the guitar and singing, and he's singing in tune, and he put it all together. He sent it to me finished like that. So I thought that was great quality. I was happy to throw the doors open to others to participate, but I didn't. What I didn't expect.
I had my Ada song, lads, and I got knocked back, and I'm devastated. I'm as devastated as Anne. I'm more devastated.
Well, didn't get knocked back. You're recording it in the car like CJ Novo, and there's lots of jackets movement sound going on. Not exactly Abbey Road.
Given some of the comments, if it's got comments that it's crap and there's keep the sound off and that sort of thing. Let's do it here and now. We'll throw the doors open to the viewing public, shall we, Gav? If anyone's got something that they think,
especially Brennan, I want to hear Brennan.
If you've got some Celtic karaoke, get it into us. Send it in through the usual socials. Stick it in the comments. Get in touch with Gav. There you go. There's the banner flying. There's how you can get in touch with us. But yeah, if you want to get involved, let's just do it. Street Shitter. Here we go. Let's go. Here he comes. This will be great. He makes music for a hobby. And I'm expecting some sort of gangster rap with a name like that, I hope. So, yeah.
I'd be delighted to see what Street Shitter can produce, what he can lay on us, That'd be interesting to see.
Reminds me of a story about Noddy Holder. Did you ever read Noddy Holder's autobiography?
Go ahead.
No, feel free to give us a snapshot.
It's what, 12:10 in Ireland. So is it over the threshold? Is it over the curtain? Okay. So apparently Noddy Holder and when Slade were knocking around Germany back in the late 60s, they were actually a skinhead band. And it was a bit like the Beatles. They were just sort of playing away and all the rest of it. But Noddy Holder didn't make much money, from playing the gigs. And anyway, he could talk to this big German fella at the bar. He says, "Look, do you and the boys want to come back to the house for a bit of a party?" He says, "Yeah, no worries. Come on, the boys are all coming back, a few drinks, blah, blah, blah." And then this German fella said, "Look, would you mind awfully? I have a request for you." Noddy goes, "Yeah, what's going on?" He says, "Do you mind if I, do something on a glass table? And I'll give you 50 francs, or not francs, 50 marks." And he says, "Go ahead."
Was Noddy Holder supposed to be underneath the table at the time?
No, Noddy Holder was underneath the table, the glass table.
Yeah. Right.
And then, no, it's in his book, verbatim, trust me, it's on his book. So apparently this happened and the boys all got a bit freaked out, but once got the 50 marks, they pissed off to some hotel. And then next time they were playing a couple of more gigs, and lo and behold, this guy appeared again. And Noddy said, you know, we made more money out of the back at his house than we did ever touring. But that was, there you are, lowering the tone. But true story.
Please don't submit those videos if anyone's.
No.
Yeah, you've come to the wrong podcast. We're not interested in those videos whatsoever.
Our street person, you know, just trying to give him something to listen to.
He's going. He will do it, and it'll be indie punk rock. I'm
Awesome.
equally happy with that. That'll be great. Well, yep.
All genres welcome.
Pleased to see that. Frank, despite his previous abuse, is now saying he couldn't hit a note in the Bank of England, so maybe he should reserve some of the criticism. I'm only joking. So yeah, I think we've covered Ange, the song with some good closure. I think we can move on. We sort of covered a bit. We started to cover the bit of the Motherwell game in amongst the injuries and who would rotate through. So let's just round that off. We've talked about lineups. Are we concerned about that match? Motherwell have been going pretty decent. By all accounts, they had our supposed main rivals hanging on the other day. How do we think we're going to shape up, Ian?
I class Motherwell away as one of these at the moment. If we play to our potential, we should win. It's kind of one of those ones. I've really only seen highlights of them this season, so I know they beat Hibs, Kelly, and Hearts well enough, but they've lost to St Mirren a couple of times, and you know they managed to get a result against, to all extents, apparently a horrific Rangers team. So I think they're probably performing, you know, pretty reasonable, pretty decent, but organisation yet again looks to be their strength. They don't seem to have like you know, the Van Veen's gone, so they don't seem to have a striker that you would pinpoint him as the danger man. I think it's collectively Kettlewell's got them, you know, well organised and well drilled, and I think it's a case of we need to kind of be disciplined. And again, it's probably going to be one of those ones that we'll have an easier day if we get the early goal. If the longer it goes, breaking down that organisation will probably be the challenge.
Gav?
Yeah, I think that sounds like a very good summary to me. I don't know that much about them. I know Kettlewell's been complaining that in the last few games they haven't had the reward for their efforts, but that comes down to the lack of cutting edge that Ian was just talking about. Two of their more significant players are called Spittle and Slattery. It sounds like they might be salivating at the prospect of playing us. There they are in fourth. They've just been overtaken, haven't they, by Rangers? So, I don't know, Brodie Spencer was said to be an ever-continuous threat in the match between those two teams. And the goalkeeper praises their sitting midfielder, Lennon Miller, as being among the best in the country. That's a name for Scottish football, isn't it? Lennon Miller.
He's Lee Miller's son, isn't he?
Is he?
Is that right? I think so. I think he's I think the Aberdeen striker, the ex-Aberdeen striker Lee Miller. I think he's his son, but he's a great prospect. What is he? 16, 17? Yeah, when we speak about youth players and players we should keep an eye on, he's definitely one that if we want to keep a close eye on him, and if we are going to grab the best young players, you probably need to move quicker than typically used to be the case. Otherwise, they'll be off to a Premier League club or somebody in Italy. Brian, any thoughts on any more thoughts on the Motherwell game before we wrap up this section and move back on to Champions League?
Yeah, I think they had a good win against Hearts away. I believe 1-0. I think the fact that we're playing on grass again is going to be, with better players. Okay, you're worried a wee bit about Scott being in nets, but I think we'll get a couple early doors. Kyogo, I mean, there's nobody you can touch Kyogo at the minute, and Dice Amira, that was brilliant to him getting that goal the other night. I think we'll get away. I don't really see any issues. I really don't. I'm just going to close the door because the dogs are out. Sorry.
No worries. Oh, look, my view's pretty similar. I think Bain's the concern, but he's had all week. To Ian's point earlier, we've not had the League Cup as a preferred distraction, so at least we've had time on the training ground. I think the big thing for me is how we set up at the back line, because if I've basically looking at social media, there doesn't seem to be a genuine sort of agreement between the fan. Not that we make a difference to how they're going to set up, but there doesn't seem to be a preferred option to how we set up. To me, the most obvious thing is slot Iwata in there next to Scales and leave the rest of the team as is. But I have seen some commentary around, putting Iwata in there and then moving Alistair Johnston into right centre back and going with a 3, which then means you chop and change the midfield as well. Can anyone see that happening? 3 at the back. He's had the week to work on it, to the earlier point.
He played it at Leicester, so I mean it could be, but it kind of goes back to what we said before. We don't really think that he fancies Iwata, but if Iwata's the only one fit with looking at Lazio, that might be it. And Lazio, I guess, they've got a couple of decent strikers, so it's, even though they're not in good form, that would be a concern. I don't think there's a good solution. I think, like you're saying, moving Johnson in, maybe Iwata, sticking with Lagerbielke to secure the 3 points. Don't know. Tough one.
Yeah, and that's very different. I mean, this is a team with no cutting edge, as we're saying. So, this should be a routine 3 points, should it not? If we can get the goals necessary. And we started off this whole conversation talking about momentum. We're sort of assuming that the momentum is going to continue and bring us into this next Champions League fixture. So it's going to be a massive shock to the system if it doesn't. And I don't even want to think about that.
Well, yeah, but I guess it's this balance between, do we just play the best side available, including Lagerbielke, on Saturday, and trying to, hope that secures the points comfortably, and then go in just with training ground experience for arguably the biggest game in our Champions League campaign. I'm not going to go as far as to say it's win or bust, but it's a pretty big game that I think need to win if we want to progress out of this group. So whilst it's not win or bust for me, because there is always the ability to a freak result against Atletico, either home or away. Probably at home. Not going to beat them away, are we? But there's always the possibility for a result in those 2 matches. But I really think we've got to get our points in
what's the other option, Paul? Right? Imagine he puts Iwata in, and then we lose, and Iwata has a shocker of a game, and then Iwata's taken out of it, and Lagerbielke's suspended. So it might just be a case of him saying, "Look, win the game that's there with the best players available." I think this comes back to, we know what Ange would have done, but I don't think we know if Rodgers is that militant with securing the next 3 points available yet.
I agree, and especially having Iwata and Bain in there, could be damage limitation, as you say. Start with Lagerbielke, get the game won, fire on Iwata for the last half an hour or so. It's too much of a risk. I think, with Scoppy and Iwata in there, and with Scales,
So how do we think it's win or bust? Lazio or Nazio?
Well, as you say, statistically, in terms of the mathematics of it, no. But realistically, if we lose this game, I think we're staring at the trapdoor. And the noises about the appalling lack of addressing what needed to be addressed in the transfer window will grow even louder. But then we'll get back to winning everything domestically and be happy with a couple of trophies at the end of the season.
I think with the Lazio game, look, the Feyenoord game had Lazio not got that last minute draw, it would have been a different perspective on the group again. And I think we're early enough that results in the other places also matter as well. So I don't think it's a must win. I would like to think we're going to win. I think we've definitely got enough, especially the form in Lazio are. We're at home to win that and kind of have a statement win. But I just think we don't know what's going to happen in our game, in other games and stuff. So I'd be reluctant in a second game of a group to call it a must-win. Personally,
I'm just so. Maybe I'm just too despondent now about Celtic in Europe, but the thought of us making a statement win just sounds like pie in the sky. Isn't that terrible?
But we need to get back on. We need to get back on track. Like, the thing is, we're all old enough to remember when we were really good in Europe. Never lost a home game and things like that. And I think for the last maybe decade, there have been a lot of hard luck stories and a lot of bad luck. And I think, genuinely has been bad luck. And I think it's been hyper, it's been, people have focused on it more because maybe over the other side of the city, they've had the opposite of that type of luck. And we've said, well, when do we get that sort of luck? And maybe it is momentum, maybe it is a shift, maybe it is a statement win to kind of get us back on track. That would be my hope for it. Because I think we played well against Feyenoord. I think we could have won, but the bad luck just took over again.
Did someone say underwhelmed? I missed that. Did you? You must have picked that up.
No, it was Frank Brennan put up a comment saying it was ginormously underwhelmed.
Oh, he loves doing that.
Or overwhelmed. Yeah. So I thought
we need to ban him. We need to ban him from the comments.
You can't ban him. Come on. He's one of our early adopters. We've got to promote the early adopters, and they're the ones that are going to share our story. Okay, so we'll go. The guys on Monday will go into Lazio in more detail. So we'll probably leave that there as time marches on. We'll do what we always do at this point, and we'll look at the Celtic socials. So this is our fun pick or interesting pick or just something that we wanted to share on social media. Brian, you've not heard from you for a little bit, so I'm gonna
makes a change.
I'm just gonna
I think it was after that story about Noddy Holder. It's like he was on
a sabbatical.
Sabbatical,
yeah. So just yours is more a general recommendation, but we'll pop it up and you can have a chat about what you want to tell us about E-Tims.
E-Tims, yeah. These are a bunch of guys similar to ourselves who, they went to university, college together, and they stayed friends, and it sort of comes out of Lurgan. They call themselves C. Montgomery Burns, Ralph Malf, Hector Bandito, and I forget the other guy's name, but they all go under pseudonyms. But they're very well read. They give a really good balanced view on things, and it's quite funny also. I would recommend, they're not your 4 Tims in the podcast kind of, or they do give a lot of insight, and I think one of them might even be a shareholder in the club, so he always has his ear to the ground. But I think they're very funny. Well, they're trying to be funny, but they're very informative, and they give a great balanced opinion. And certainly C. Montgomery Burns is the guy from Lurgan, which I'm not allowed to say his name, but he's very, very intelligent man, speaks very well. And again, just for another bit of Celtic content, anybody out there. And Ralph Malf does at the Celtic E-Tims diary every other day, I think, on Twitter. It's worth a read, There you go. That's me.
Cheers, Brian. Well, yeah, but do they cobble together karaoke tunes and chat about shitting on tables?
No, definitely not.
At least we've captured our niche.
And they're free. They're not Patreon. There we go.
Good, just like us. Okay, we're free.
Just like us. So yes.
I like the way you went. Just like us. E-Tims, who's been going. It's a blog that's been going for decades. Well, at least a decade. And then branched into podcasts and everything else, and you compared us to them. So that appreciate that. We all got to start somewhere, I guess. Ian, we didn't have time to grab your clip, but do you want to just mention the Twitter poster that you were talking about?
You need to remind me of the handle of the guy. I think it says Brian Guns, isn't it?
It's Brian's Guns, or Brian's Gun, I think it is. So it's as in Brian Gunn, but with the Y. But I think it's Brian as in it's his gun. He owns the gun. Do you want to talk about what he does on there?
Yeah, so he basically just goes through. I mean, he must have some sort of AI software, just goes through all the kind of clips of people giving interviews and cuts out little bits and little patterns, and then makes a joke right at the end of it. So there's one going around at the moment with which features Brendan Rodgers, which is why it caught my eye, talking about a beautiful arrogance, and then the punchline right at the end. I'll share it on social later, but there's a really good punchline at the end. So if anyone sees his stuff, he's doing good work, or she, or they,
yeah. So they are doing good work. The one I saw this week was it was just lots of snippets of managers saying it's really hard to play against 10 men. And it was just layered across it. And then every so often he cuts in one going, it isn't, that's nonsense. It's very well done. So Ian's got a much bigger following than me on Twitter, but I will share a couple of his things, and I'm sure Ian will get further with his as well. Thank you for that. Gav, do you want to talk us through yours, or do you want me to go before you?
Well, no, I can go now. I'm going to put up an image, and what you're about to see is a tweet of a picture of a garden, and I'll do it so you can relax there, Paul. Oh. So I'm going to show you a picture of a garden. I want you to look at the bottom of the image first. There's a pond with lily pads and some steps leading up to some sort of tent. And so what's so exciting about that? Well, if you read what it says at the top, it says, close your eyes, 75%, and who do you see?
Oh.
Isn't that clever?
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It's very weird. Very weird.
So it makes you wonder, what's going on there? How did that come about? What's real? What's not? Was there a picture that looked a wee bit like him and then they've altered the image to make it more like him? Or what do you think the backstory is behind how that picture came to be?
I don't know. I've seen a couple of these ones now. I saw ones with goats that had, when the goats were all together, it kind of made a face as well. So I'm not sure. I mean, look, I don't want to discredit the Sean guy, but I think there is a bit of like AI imagery going on now and people playing about with things that they couldn't do before, because a couple of these are cropping up. So it'd be interesting to know if it is real or if it has been done by some sort of AI.
I reckon it's AI. Because if you just in the thumbnail, if I look at the thumbnail before we loaded it, I can see in the tiny little thumbnail that it's Cristiano Ronaldo from there without even, because it's so small. I don't need to squeeze my eyes. So I reckon there's some AI wizardry on that, but it's pretty cool all the same. Thank you for that, Gav.
It's incredibly clever.
And mine, so I'm usually trying to bring something wholesome to this section. So I am going to use our albeit smallish platform at the moment to try and bring some attention to a good cause this week. So I'm just going to bring this up. Hopefully that works. So this is a post by a guy that I'm mates with on Facebook and I've met a couple of times in real life, John Paul Gilmartin. He was heavily involved in the Kano Foundation, which is on that shirt, and most Celtic fans I think will have a bit of knowledge about the Kano Foundation, but it's a bit of a snapshot. They're the not-for-profit that take kids along to Celtic Park and get to see games who might otherwise not get to matches. Now, they were started off the back of another Celtic blog, Celtic Quick News. The guys, as a blog I used to follow many years ago when there wasn't much of this content around. Now we're saturated. But Celtic Quick News was one of the better ones back in the day. And one of the contributors, a guy called Martin Kane, who was based right here in Perth, Australia, and I was lucky enough to meet him when I first visited Australia. He had a pretty severe illness and he was in hospital and for a long time and needed to get his home basically altered to allow him to come back into living in a wheelchair. And the guys and girls on Celtic Quick News basically rallied together and cobbled together a charitable sort of donation and raffles and other bits and pieces, and they raised a ton of cash. I think they needed 50 or 60 grand to get him home, and they made all that in Moa, got him home, and then with the spare cash they decided to get a few kids along to Celtic Park, and then off the back of that, the Kano Foundation was born, and it's been going strong ever since. Well, two of the people that have been heavily involved in the Kano Foundation, Teresa and Tommy Gallagher, since the very beginning. Unfortunately, Therese has been diagnosed with a brain tumor, and she is now unfortunately in a similar boat where she's going to need assistance to alter the home to get her back. So the guys in the Kano Foundation are sort of pivoted and done a little doing a fundraiser for her. They've put up the shirt. They're asking that if just for £1, you make £1 donation, you go in the raffle for the shirt and a couple other bits and pieces. They've already raised quite a lot of cash, but they need some more. So I just wanted to use this sort of minute to bring this to attention. I'll put it on my socials, probably leaning into Ian here to see if he will share that and see if we can pull a few more bits of following to Celtic fans that can contribute to this. But yeah, it's a bit more serious than my usual stuff, but I thought it was something we wanted to, or we should be trying to support as a Celtic fan base. So yeah, if you can get involved, please do, and we'll maybe stick it in the comments of this show afterwards, and I'll put it on my socials as well. But yeah, wish them all the best and hope that we can help them raise some funds.
Very good. Nice to end on a wholesome note after some of the dark places we went to during the chat.
Great stuff. So that is us. We're just over the hour. I think we'll wrap it up there. So thank you to everyone in the comments for joining us. Sorry we didn't get through all of them, but we appreciate you being here. Please follow us, like us, share us with your mates. And we look forward to catching you on Monday. Thank you all.
Cheers.